Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be reviewing a new product for you guys, and this is something that has been advertised to me relentlessly on social media, and that is the Juno & Co. Beauty Sponge. I have two different versions of the sponge here with me, and I'm going to talk to you guys a little bit about what they actually are, why they're so special, and where and how you can get them. So if you guys want to figure out what all the hype is about, then just keep on watching. I've gone ahead and pulled my hair back because I am going to be giving this thing my first impressions test right here, right now with you guys. But before we get into that, let's start from the beginning. There are two versions of the sponge advertised on Juno & Co.'s website, and that is the Microfiber Velvet Sponge and the Microfiber Fusion Sponge. They arrived to me in about 2 weeks in this beautifully holographic shipper, and they came in these resealable little plastic pouches. These sponges ran me $6 a piece, which is a fraction of the price of an actual beauty blender, and I had a 20% off coupon, which brought my total with shipping to $13.55. They did send me a coupon code with my order for another 20% off. The code for that is Happy Blending. I will leave that down in the description below. I am not sponsored by them. This is not an affiliate code. This is just something that they sent me in the mail, which I would assume you would get if you ordered them too. So right off the bat, two of them are a lot less expensive than one beauty blender, but they're about on par with other beauty sponge brands out there. I also received this little pamphlet in my package, which seems to just have some information about the sponge and about the company. It's supposed to be a beauty sponge / brush combination. It has a velvet outside that's supposed to be used for bronzers and blushes, and then I'm assuming you'll wet it for more liquidy things like foundation and concealer. Inside of each of the little pouches, you do get a little pamphlet with information about how to use and clean the sponge. Because you would normally apply your foundation or concealer or contouring before you apply any powders, I have the two here. I'm going to be trying one of them wet and one of them dry, so long as it tells me they both do the same thing, which so far is my understanding. Right now, the only difference I can see is the shape. This is the Microfiber Fusion Sponge, and this is the Velvet Sponge. The Velvet Sponge has a flat bottom with a rounded back and a flat side, while the Microfusion has a rounded bottom, a flat side, and a flat top. They're both the same amount of squishiness. The velvet on the outside feels literally exactly the same and looks exactly the same. Like I said, I am going to be trying one of them dry and one of them wet. So I'm going to put my foundation and all of that on first with a wet sponge, and then I'm going to go and do all of my powders with the other. At the end, I'm going to put my typical beauty blender cleaning method to the test and see how easily these clean out. It feels more comfortable for me personally to apply my foundation and things with a rounded bottom because that's what I'm used to with the beauty blender. So I'm going to use this one as my wet, which is the Microfiber Fusion, and I'm going to use the Velvet Sponge for my powders. I'm gonna go wet this sponge off camera, and then I will be back to show you what exactly happens once it's wet. Okay, I just wet the Microfiber Fusion Sponge, and to my surprise, it did expand quite a bit. This is the Velvet Sponge, which is dry right now, and this is the Microfiber Fusion. As you can see, it did get a little bit bigger than when it's dry, and it's also a lot squishier than it was. It's a lot squishier than even a Real Technique sponge, but still not quite as squishy as a beauty blender. This thing is like heavy. I think it's holding a lot right now. It really sucked up the water, so I'm excited to see what's gonna happen. The velvet doesn't seem so rough as it did when it was dry. This is exciting. I'm going to start out like I normally would by priming my face with my Benefit POREfessional Matte Rescue, and then I'm going to use a foundation that I typically use a lot, and that is the Tarte Double Duty Shape Tape in the hydrating formula. This should give me a pretty good baseline for how the sponge is performing so that I don't have any outside factors contributing to things being weird. It's going to be my normal routine, things that I use every day that I am used to. The instructions said to use a dime-sized amount of product and to put it on the back of your hand, not directly to the sponge. For this foundation, I would normally put it directly on my face, but just for the sake of the instructions and to make sure I'm doing everything correctly, I'm going to take some of this and put it on the back of my hand. I'm taking the butt of the wet Microfiber Fusion and I'm going to dip right in. Ooh, that's kind of weird. Immediately, it seems like it's just kind of pooling on the butt. It doesn't seem to be like soaking in like a beauty blender would. It doesn't seem to be spreading either. Oh yeah, this is going on thick. First impressions, it does not feel like I'm smacking myself in the face as much as it does when I use the Real Technique sponge or other inexpensive Beauty Blender alternatives. So right away, that's a plus. It's definitely a lot softer. It also seems like this is giving me a lot more full coverage than a Beauty Blender would. That covered up any little spots that I had in one swipe, where with the Beauty Blender, I would have to go in once or twice more. However, that kind of ate my foundation up. It says that it's not supposed to do that and it's supposed to make your product go a long way, but that is definitely a lot more product than I normally would put on with this foundation, and I feel like I'm having a hard time spreading it around my face and there's nothing left on my hand. I like see little bits where the foundation seems to be like really in there and caked up, but it's not coming off. So far, it's okay. Compared to the Beauty Blender, I feel like I did use a little bit more product with this sponge, but compared to other Beauty Blender alternatives like the Real Technique sponge or the e.l.f. sponge or the Fenty Beauty sponge, this one is definitely a lot softer and I like how it blended the product out better. Just for a little close-up right now, you can see it is blended out pretty flawlessly. It doesn't seem too cakey or like there are any spots that have been missed. For concealer, I'm going to be using my NARS Radiant Creamy. This is something that I use on a daily basis and covers everything no problem. I don't normally have to put too much and I can spread it out very easily with my Beauty Blender. So let's see what this sponge can do. I'm going to go in with the flat butt side on my chin and my forehead. I'm going to use the chiseled side for under my eyes. And we're going to figure out what the heck to do for my eyelids. With the Beauty Blender, I usually squish it down really tiny with the pointed side and it gets in there very well. Can't really do that with this, so let's see what happens. Whew. Well, couple of thoughts. Putting it on your face first and then blending it out definitely makes it pick up a lot less product. You can see my foundation is still in there from when I picked it up off of my hand, but blending my concealer straight in, there's like barely anything on that brush. It definitely does not pick up as much product when you put it directly onto your face and then blend it. I like the butt of this. I think that the butt works pretty much like a Beauty Blender with the exception of sucking up a little bit of product when you're taking it off the back of your hand, but I'm just still not really used to these flat sides. I flipped it around a couple of times and used this side, which I actually liked a little bit better. And I also tried to use this smaller flat end to get on my eyes and it kind of just hurt. I will say I definitely should have used a little bit less concealer because I do feel the slightest bit cakey right now. Also, this has definitely dried out quite a bit and I think that the lack of wetness was definitely affecting things a little bit, but it's still so soft and squishy. So that's it for the Microfiber Fusion Sponge. Honestly, out of all of the alternatives right now for a Beauty Blender, I think this is my favorite. It's about the same price as any of those knockoffs from e.l.f. or from Real Techniques, but I think that this is a lot softer and so far has performed much more similarly to a Beauty Blender. And now we're gonna try it out dry. I'm a little nervous because this thing is so hard. It like kind of hurts to squeeze and it like feels like a wrinkly hairless cat when you squeeze it. But I'm gonna use this to set and bake under my eyes. I'm gonna put on some bronzer and contouring with this and we'll see how it goes. Starting off with some baking, I have my Too Faced Born This Way powder. I'm gonna take this flat end here. Okay, that's interesting. That's holding on to that too. Okay, this is kind of weird. Let me get this baking done and then I'll come back to you with my final thoughts as far as baking goes. That was kind of weird, but I kind of like it. Right now, the only thing that's concerning me is that this looks like it's holding on to a lot of product. Like that's stuffed with powder. How did that not all come off on my face? Like that seems like it's full. But what I do like about it, even if it is holding on to a lot of powder, I was able to use a lot less powder because it kind of just lets go of just enough product to hold on to the wetness caused by your liquid foundation and concealer. I'm gonna let this bake sit while I do up my eyes a little bit, and then I will be back with the same sponge to do some contouring and bronzing. Okay, I have pretty classic Sophia look on right now. So we're gonna wipe away this bake and start with some powdered contouring. Already hit a roadblock here. You're definitely still gonna need some face brushes, even if you have this product, because you can't really wipe away with this. It's just not, it's not practical. It's not gonna pull all of the excess product away, and there's just not enough sides to be able to use it for all of that. So, just gonna wipe away with my normal favorite blending brush from e.l.f. and then we can move into the contouring. I'm gonna be using my Hoola Benefit bronzer, and I'm probably gonna use the pointed tip right here on the rounded side and just use that to kind of stipple it into my cheekbones. So it's picking up product, but you do have to kind of go in hard, and I feel like, I don't know if that's too much or not. Oh, I kind of love this. And see how far we can stretch this. Okay, I think that's all we're getting out of that one dab. Immediately, I like the amount of product that it picks up and puts down. So even though I did kind of pick up a lot in that one go, it distributed it very lightly, and I was able to build it up and blend it out at the same time, which is giving me this really, really natural glow. I also really like the control that I have with it. I was able to put it down in a straight line and just slightly blur it out. That's exactly what you want when you're contouring, and that's kind of hard to achieve with a brush because it can get blown out very quickly. I also really like how far I was able to drag that. I was able to get that whole cheekbone in and pull it slightly up to my forehead all in one go, which normally with a brush I would designate like one pat of the brush to each section. So let's keep going. I kind of love that. That did take a little bit longer than it probably should have, but I feel like that's also because I was able to get so much control and precision with it that I went a little heavy and intense with it, which I'm not mad about. It blended out pretty nicely. There are some areas that I probably could have spent a little bit more time on and blended out more, but I was able to really build this up fairly quickly. It was the blending that took a little bit of time to get figured out. But now I'm a little bit concerned with bronzer. My bronzer usually goes on more like a wash of color over my cheeks and my forehead, and I don't really know how I'm gonna get that with this or what part to even use to get that. See what happens. I'm gonna use my Marc Jacob bronzer, which is absolutely destroyed right now and I'm pissed about. I guess I'm gonna use more so of the wider fat part of the round side, and I'm gonna just try to go very, look at that, look, it's fucking cracking again. I'm so pissed at this bronzer. I paid so much money for this. Okay. I don't know how I'm feeling about this. Like, it's getting on there and it looks nice, but it's taking entirely too long, and I feel like I'm not getting to the point where it's exactly what I want. I'm gonna continue going though, and I'm gonna keep using the fat bottom side here and just try to get as close as possible to my normal bronze. Bronzing was not my favorite with it, but it's okay. I will say though, if it came to something like a traveling situation where you're trying to save space, you could make it work. I'm gonna move on to brush, and for that I'm gonna use the flat bottom of it, and I'm just using the blush from my Aspen Ovard palette with Tarte, and I'm just gonna go, oh, it fits like perfectly in there. Oh, when I dip in, it's like not covering the whole bottom. New plan, I'm gonna use the same rounded backside that I used for the bronzer, I guess. this thing is very full of product right now, and there's very limited space for me to do anything else, but I do want to try to highlight with this. I'm going to use my Becca highlighter in Moonstone. This is something that gives me like a really natural glow, and I want to see how much I can build it up and make it really pop using this thing. But again, I'm having the problem of where do I go from here? I want to use a kind of pointed tip, so I think I'm going to use one of these sides up by the top point. And again, it picks up a lot of product, so I want to go in pretty lightly, not seeing anything. It's alright. It's not putting on a lot of product, and I feel like it's kind of blunting it a little bit too much for it to do what it's supposed to be doing. I'm going to try a little bit of a more intense highlighter. The Becca for me normally goes on pretty naturally and doesn't look too like I have highlighter on, but the Ofra on the other hand, the Ofra highlighters are very, very shimmery. I'm going to try to go in with one of these since it does seem like this is putting on a little bit more of a natural layer, and I'm going to see if this kind of tones this down. Oh yeah, okay. Okay, that's what we're using this for. That's all the makeup I have to put on, so I'm gonna go ahead and set this, and then I will be back to give you guys my pros and cons. 2 sponges, $6 a piece. As far as I can tell, they're the same exact sponge, just different shape. Overall, the wet sponge. Kind of love it. I think that you should definitely apply your liquids to your face first and then blend it out as opposed to on the back of your hand. I love the shape for the foundation, especially the bottom. I love the flat part for the concealer. Be aware that you should use less product than you normally would because it does not pick up as much product as a normal beauty blender or beauty sponge would. But overall, the finish of it looks great. It looks like it looks when I use my beauty blender. I don't see any cakiness or patchiness. It seems like this is my skin. I love the squishiness of it. I thought that the velvet on it was gonna be weird, but it actually feels pretty similar to what a beauty blender would feel like. It feels a little rough and rigid when it's dry, but when it's wet, it feels very, very soft. The dry one, I am torn. Powdered contouring, everything went exactly where I wanted to put it and blended it out just enough that it wasn't a harsh line. Bronzer was underwhelming. Blush, I think it put on beautifully, but by that point, I was running out of space. I feel like things got a little bit muddy because I was using the same part that I used for the bronzer and the contouring. But overall, not the worst thing that I've used. Lastly, highlighting. I thought it did a pretty good job. I think that you definitely have to use something that's a little bit more pigmented and flashy, and then this will kind of tone it down a little bit. When I used my normal everyday kind of highlight, I feel like it didn't even show up. Baking is kind of weird. Don't know how to feel about it. I think that it did a great job in distributing just enough product to set everything without making it really cakey, but I feel like it's holding a lot. It's holding a lot, and when I was using it to do other parts of my face, it was like blowing up in my eyes and kind of irritated me. So I feel like it might waste a little bit of your powder if that's what you're using it for. For the final test, before I give you guys my yes or no on this product, I'm gonna try to wash it. I've had a lot of trouble washing other beauty sponges. This supposedly holds all of your makeup on the surface and doesn't soak it into the center. So we'll see about that. I'm gonna use my typical beauty blender cleaning routine, just some warm water and some Dawn dish soap. I'm gonna go try that out on both the wet and the dry off camera, and I will be back with my final verdict. Both sponges are clean for the most part. The velvet sponge, which we used with the dry powders, cleaned out very, very easily. The only problem that I have with this, which is something that I have a problem with all sponges that aren't beauty blenders, is when you're trying to clean them, it's kind of like trying to clean a rock. You can't like keep squeezing it and inflating it. It just kind of squeezes and then stays like that, and you gotta just like keep squeezing it. But everything came out of it. It is as clean as when I took it out. The Fusion sponge, however, did have a couple of stubborn foundation spots on the bottom. I think that is a little bit of user error. I think that's just kind of what happens when you overload a sponge. It just really digs deep down in there and it's hard to clean out. On a beauty blender, normally you can just kind of like really push your thumb into there and it'll come out. but because this has this layer of fabric around it and it has a kind of denser foam to it, it's hard to really dig in there and get it out. So I feel like those couple of little spots are just there now. Nothing I can really do about it. Overall though, I do think that these performed better in the cleanup than the Real Technique sponge or any of the other non-Beauty Blender beauty sponges that I've used. Okay, final verdict. I think the sponges are worth it. At $6 a piece, which is what a normal non-Beauty Blender beauty sponge would cost you, I like these a lot more than any of the alternatives that I've tried. I think they're a lot softer, and I think that they leave your skin with a more airbrushed finish. They don't make you look cakey, and they distribute the product pretty evenly and cleanly. Like I've already mentioned, I think they're the same exact material, just a different shape, so I think the preference is up to you whether you like a flatter sponge or a rounder sponge. Speaking of powders versus liquids, I don't think you can use one sponge for both. Maybe at different times, but if you're looking to do your full face using this sponge, splurge for two. It's $12, use your 20% off coupon, $10. It wasn't my favorite thing to use for powdered products, but I think that for baking and for powder contouring, this thing actually worked pretty great. I probably won't be reaching for it all the time when I'm doing those things to my face, but I can definitely see me using this when I travel. Taking 2 of them instead of taking 7 brushes saves some room. So once again, if you guys are interested in this product, I will leave the website and the coupon code that they gave me on my receipt down below. Not an affiliate code, not sponsored video. I won't be making any money from this. This is just something that I'm sharing with you guys since I already have mine. Let me know if there are any other products that you guys would like me to review down in the comments below, and give this video a big thumbs up if you like first impression reviews. Don't forget to hit that big red subscribe button right down below to stay up to date with when I post new videos every week. And until next time, bye guys!